Order for the March 4th work session. Our next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd please stand and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to pretend like I'm reading an announcement here, but I'm not. If you're parked in the 30-minute zone or not, don't worry. Dave Goby's here in the room, so anyone else who's able to write a ticket is here today too. So I think we are all good for the day, aren't we, Dave? All right, we got a confirmation. We have a full house today, so we won't worry about that part.
That's cool.
Yeah. We do have Councillor Lickey zooming in today. I can't see if she's on there or not, but it's her intentions to zoom in with us today. Our next order of business is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the mayor. In consideration of others wishing to speak, please limit your remark to 3 minutes. Also, the Lewiston City Council pledges to practice and promote civility within the governing body, advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of the city of Lewiston. So if there are any citizens here that would like to provide comment, I would invite you up to the podium here. Introduce yourself, your city of residence. You'll have 3 minutes. For anyone speaking today, we have 3 microphones in this room. They're the small round ones. There's one right here, there's one right above Officer Reese's family, and then one right above the podium here. But you have to kind of speak up loudly and clearly so those at home can hear what you have to say, and especially those in the back of the room also. So are there any citizen comments today? Welcome in. Okay, I don't see any. We'll just keep moving through. Next agenda item is presentation. Item A, Lewiston Police Department badge pinning ceremony promoting Sergeant Chris Reese to captain. This is a great day. It's a very joyous moment, and we're all excited to be here. And with that, Chief Cusick, I'll turn it over to you, and we will follow your lead. Welcome.
Mayor, Jason Cusick, Chief of Police City of Lewiston. It is a very exciting day. Step one in this kind of moving forward with getting filled in our ranks. Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, ladies and gentlemen, fellow officers, and esteemed colleagues, I appreciate your time this afternoon. Today we celebrate in a significant milestone, and that's as we share in the promotion of our new police captain, Chris Reese. There's incredible responsibility that comes with this role, and I'd just like to share a few thoughts. Being a police captain is not merely a title. It's a commitment to serve our community and our department with unwavering dedication. Our officers face challenges daily, some visible, other hidden beneath the surface. But as leaders, we must recognize these challenges, make sure we provide resolute support to all of our teams. In a post-9/11 world, police officers have become multifaceted, a Swiss Army knife. We're police professionals, but we're also part medic, part lawyer, part psychiatrist, and part teacher. Our duty extends beyond just enforcing the law. It encompasses compassion, empathy, and understanding. Collaboration is the cornerstone of effective law enforcement. We must work together across departments and agencies to address complex issues. Our strength lies in unity, the ability to stand shoulder to shoulder, facing adversity with determination. Captain Reese, remember that you're not alone in this journey. Lean on your family, your friends, and your fellow officers. Seek their wisdom and learn from their experiences, and together we can overcome any obstacle. As you step into this new role, consider the legacy you wish to leave. What mark will you make on this department? And how will your leadership impact the lives of our officers and the communities we serve? Your actions will ripple through time, shaping the future of law enforcement at LPD. So please be a model of integrity, fairness, and courage. Lead by example and inspire those around you to strive for excellence. Your wife, Aubrey, and also to your kids, Haley, Camden, Brinley, and Gavin. Policing is not a solo endeavor. And as a profession, we cannot be anywhere near as effective without a loving and supportive family. We appreciate your sacrifices over the years and that you've allowed your husband and your dad to excel and to be instrumental in LPD carrying out our duties and responsibilities. We will do our part to keep them well and successful, just as you all have. In closing, I want to congratulate Chris Reese. May your journey be filled with purpose, resilience, and a commitment to justice. Remember that you're not just a captain, you are continuing as a guardian of our community's safety and well-being. I appreciate your dedication and thank you. And may you continue to uphold all the standards of leadership, service, and duty. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to call up the city clerk to do an oath of office, and then we'll also present Captain Reese with his certificate and also his badge pinning, but not in that particular order.
Well, I'll have you stand here and we'll raise your right hand and after me. I state your name.
I, Chris Reese,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Idaho,
and the laws and ordinances of the city of Lewiston,
and the laws and ordinances of the city of Lewiston,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my abilities,
faithfully discharge all of the duties
faithfully discharge all the duties
of the office of police captain
of the office of police captain
in the city of Lewiston.
in the city of Lewiston.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Aubrey's doing the badge pinning?
Yeah,
All right.
done it a couple of times.
Hopefully she stabbed you every time.
Only once.
No, last time we did a race and I was the quickest, so I don't know, we'll see.
Got an accurate turnout.
Yeah, very humbled.
Actually, I think there's more people here than were when I got sworn in. So that's for you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Where is it? I was actually gonna buy one of these.
No joke. It's taken care of.
That's
Welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you very much for your time, your patience with this, so thank you. Thank you. Everybody attending, thank you very much.
Well, again, thank you to everyone for joining us today to celebrate this. And Officer Reese, congratulations again. Thank you.
Right. There's so much more exciting things to happen. You want me to stay?
It's not us.
I'm so glad you
Hey, Chris.
I know, that was cool. And it's really early in the day. It's like 8. It used to be
Congratulations.
to 9. I wish we had more of that. It's probably too inconvenient for them, but it'd be cool if we had more of them here. I know, it would be. Yeah. That's what's nice when they do the firemen get their penny and stuff, because you can go in the afternoon and see it at the library.
He said there was more here.
There's a lot. And it's the whole room. It's empty. Where'd everybody go?
I think we'll keep Dave there for the rest of the meeting, so I don't get a ticket. I parked way away because of that.
Right, I know I had to park like a couple of streets down.
Yeah, well, me too. Maybe it's because it was the only. What'd you guys do? Where'd everybody go? Is everybody away?
An engineer with PowerPoint.
They're like, we're out. This doesn't seem interesting.
Yeah, they heard what you were gonna talk about.
With the PowerPoint.
The many
Don't want to hear about roads. You drive on them every day.
We ready?
So,
Did Counselor Lidke make it in?
I've been here, got to see the swearing in.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, Council, next we'll move on to Roman number 5, discussion items. Please note that identifying an item as an action item does not require the City Council to vote on that item. Item A is Pavement Management Report, January 2024, summary from Public Works Director Johnson of the various conditions of the City of Lewiston's pavement. Director, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director, here to talk about pavement this afternoon. I have about, 20 slides kind of summarizing the report that was in your packet. What this is today is, this is a draft report. This is, was funded through the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So it is still draft. It has not been adopted by the planning organization at this point, but it kind of feeds into next week. We'll be talking about the capital improvement plan for transportation, and we're starting to roll in towards budget. So this was the opportunity that I would have to bring this in front of you, and as I said, it's in draft form. The intent of today is to basically summarize the findings of the report. I don't intend to go into any high level of detail about any specific findings of the report, because there's a lot of data in this, if it was in your packet. So you noticed how much data was in there. We're still digesting it ourselves. We're still finding a few corrections, tweaks in there that we're making. So I'm not really gonna go into recommendations, how it would impact future planning or budgets or anything like that, but there are some things I'll specifically call out. And so, yeah, like I said, we will not be making any specific funding requests or recommendations moving forward. Also we'll go into a little bit of detail about the engineering and science behind pavement preservation, why we do what we do, how we keep our funds most efficient use of them and managing the pavement. So with all that being said, here's the report that was in your packet. Basically what this is I mean, I will be honest with you, I've been very excited to provide this information to you. Engineers with data is something that is a dangerous thing, but this is something I enjoy sharing with you, and so I'm always looking for a different perspective on this. And so the technology is continuing to evolve, and I can say I've been in this industry long enough to say how it used to be done and how technology now, you can see the van on the cover sheet there. They basically come in and they drive every road in the city of Lewiston. They have sensors, they have cameras, record everything, and they take it back to their home base and they digest all of the data. What they do is they compile. They take each street segment, and the grade that it's given is based off of the distance, basically divided by the irregularities in the pavement. So it could be cracks, it could be rutting, patches, things like that. So that's all put into a standardized formula, so all streets in America are based off that same matrix, and so then it's given a score. So basically, here's kind of what I just was laying out there. It looks at the types of distress, how many are there, how bad they are. Sometimes the cracks are very narrow, some are very wide, and then it spits out a grade there. Now, spending a little time on this, you can see basically green is good, red is bad at the top. So a PCI index, pavement condition index, range is 0 to 100. So 100 is they just paved it an hour ago. It is black, it's beautiful, it's still hot, there is no irregularities to it, and it's a perfect street. And I went to an asphalt conference one time and they said, that is one of the 0 index and the 100 index are your two worst enemies, because you never really, outside of the moment that it came out of the paver, you don't want 100. That means you've spent way too much money trying to get your entire network into 100. So 100 is great when it comes right out, but the expectation is you're operational. If a city said our priority is to be 100, that's a waste of money, because you're gonna be trying to pave every street, every summer, and it would be a headache and it would be super expensive. Whereas the inverse of that is a 0, where every road is impassable and you spent no dollars on anything. So what's in between is basically the bulk of all of your street network. So if you can read that, it was in the report. As you get on the top, you're looking at very simple surface treatments to that: crack sealing, fog coats, and basically water is the enemy of the street. So if you've built your road on a good foundation and you've sealed it from water, that road should last a very long time. And if you you put out the new road, then you start seeing some surface cracks. You go out there, you wanna put the crack sealing and make sure that thing is waterproof. Because water gets in there, it seeps in there, the freeze thaw or the effects of the water will undermine your foundation and undermine your asphalt, and you'll start getting spalling, you'll get cracking, and I'll show you some of the pictures inside that will eat away your asphalt. And so as you go down that list from green to red, you'll start seeing, as you get down to the 40s, you'll need to do, extraction of that, extraction of the pavement, extraction of some of the subbase to get in there to firm that up. And once you get down into the 20s, basically below a 40, that means you're looking at a reconstruction. And the science, the engineering behind pavement management is if you can get it on the front end, you're gonna be way cheaper than to try and replace the entire street. And that's just, I think that's kind of the basics. The analogies of, I think what we always come up here with, it's either a car or it's a house. So the analogy today is a house. If you let your roof go, you keep it watertight, the house itself will last much longer than if you've got a leaky roof. It starts getting water damage within the structure of the house, and pretty soon you have to build a new house because the entire floor is rotten. And so that's basically the strategy of what we're trying to do out there. This is just a quick summary sheet. I'm not gonna go through all the data, but you can kind of pick out some of the numbers that you can see in there. Our entire street network is 209 linear miles. And then put that out there, its average width is 32 feet. You can see most of our network is asphalt, so 208 feet, or 208 miles versus 1.3 miles of concrete. The overall area of almost 4 million square yards of concrete or asphalt out there. Skip ahead to the numbers that we're gonna dive into for today. So we'll ignore the purple line. The purple line is skewed because it was one data point, so that's a minor arterial. I haven't dove into why they designated that one segment of minor arterial, but we're gonna look at the red, the blue, and the green. So the green, we'll start with the good news. The good news is our local streets are at a PCI of 87. And that is a good number. I think that is an acceptable number. And you can kind of see the trend line going from left to right, the very poor segments all the way up to excellent segments. And you can as you can see, it builds up. And we have a very large portion, roughly 70% of our local streets are in an excellent condition. So, the reasons behind that are a little bit easier. They're easier streets to maintain. They're less industrial traffic on it, so you see less big trucks impacting those streets. But regardless, generally the shape of our local streets are good, and we've been saying that. Stepping back into the collectors, this one is a little bit more indicative of how the data really should show what you're looking at. You can see it trend lines up. Everything's a good portion. The majority is in the very good portion, and it trends down a little bit towards excellent. So you see that bell curve going up and back down. That is kind of indicative of what we kind of assumed, a collector PCI of 76. So we're right, 80 is where we want to shoot for. And a PCI of 76 is, we could probably invest in our collectors a little bit more, but overall that data is pretty good. Now the bad news, arterials. So arterials, you'll see the red, the bell curve peaks at fair and tapers off at excellent. And we have some that are in poor and very poor condition. And so the data kind of backs up what my theory was previously when I've spoken with you, in that the city of Lewiston has done a very good job managing their local streets and keeping them in manageable condition. And the arterials are not so much in that shape. And so I think people would listen to me and say, our overall index is good. And then you drive up 21st Street or Thane or some of these other streets that are not in great shape and say, which roads did you drive on? Are you sure you didn't drive in Clarkston or somewhere else? Because these roads are terrible. And I think generally, if you live, the street network, you live on a local street more than likely. You get on your local, you drive down your road, and then pretty soon you're on a collector feeding into an arterial. Everybody drives an arterial every day, and they drive the same arterial. Not everybody drives the same local street every day, because everybody disperses from their house to their work. And so they don't notice necessarily my neighborhood street or the neighborhood streets across this, the other neighborhood. Those are in good shape because they don't drive on those. They drive on 21st every day. They see these and can tell you, I think our roads are bad. I would only argue that arterials are in a position where they are not, the PCIs for, using 21st Street, it's an example that I'll use later in here. It has degraded to such a point where we can't just do a crack seal, we can't just do a chip seal on there. We have to invest in a deeper fix on that. And so a PCI of 62 on an arterial, but yet you have poor and very poor conditions, that's not where we want to be with those arterials, because one, those are reconstructs, and two, those are very expensive reconstructs. Those are 4 or 5 lanes and a lot of traffic moving in there that you got to divert. Just a quick snapshot of overall the network, 2/3, and this matches up generally with almost all municipalities. Your local streets, your neighborhood streets are about 2/3 of your network, and then depending on your connectivity, if you've got an interstate or some other industrial areas, your arterials collectors make up that other third. Just generally kind of the outline, this is the network as the streets as a whole. So you can see over 50% of our streets are in good, excellent condition. What they've classified as backlog, as poor and very poor, basically that they have not had adequate maintenance and are in a condition of reconstruction. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of the report is I think a lot of people may look, like I keep saying, 80, your score is 80, 81, I don't buy it, so show me the evidence. And so here's, this is 10th, so this is the Doggy Cinema right here. I drive this street a couple times a week, and it makes me mad every time I drive across. It doesn't really show up here with the reflection off there, but you can kind of see this is what we call alligator cracking. It basically looks like the alligator, and so you've got settlement in the subbase, multiple cracks in there, and so water has settled on there and is now basically eaten away that asphalt. So it's lost its bond, it's now permeable, it goes right through there, and this will continue to cause more disruption and more settlement and more rutting right in that area. So that is the first sign that you have some base issues, is when you start seeing these alligator cracking. 10th is also in poor shape because you can see there was a lot of utility cuts that weren't necessarily, patched back, but when you have so much utility cuts, you get the washboard across all that. So this is the one they used an example for a PCI of 13. And so just quickly going through the pictures as we climb up there, this is the next couple are 21st Street, so PCI of 32. This is one that we are scheduled for. We've already done, we talked about quality patching, so they've gone through, cut out the alligator cracking, and I think I don't remember if this was done before or after we did that quality patching, but you can see there's a patch here, but you've got alligator cracking coming on either end of that. So there's quality patching that was done in here. It wasn't adequate. It continues to degrade, but we will be doing more improvements on 21st in the next, this spring. Another one on 21st Street, just further up the hill. Now we're getting a little bit better, but a PCI of 47. Now we're out on 8th Street. And now we're starting to get into what, I would say more acceptable levels of asphalt and varying levels of repair. You can kind of start seeing there's some utility patching, but nothing, you don't see any alligator cracking out there. You don't see too bad of rutting. Now we're getting, 17th Street more. This is a 66. It's in good condition. 11th Avenue, I don't see anything, just some real small wears in there, 75. So again, this is about where we want to see our street overall to be at. And then excellent, this is one of our newer streets out there on 18th going Clearview Point Drive, kind of out there. This is Canyon Crest over here. So a brand new street should score very high. I did want to throw this picture in here. This is from the Nez Perce County Historical Society. So this is Bryden and 6th Street looking, this would be kind of, this would be north, going to that northeast looking out there. Back when it was orchards. I threw this in here for two reasons. One, you can kind of see how far our network has gone. This based off I think this was between 1910, 1915, so a little over 100 years ago. One reason, just to show you how, this intersection is much busier today than it is in this picture. But also, I talked about water on the top, base on the bottom. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this section of Bryden is probably about the same base. A lot of these roads in the orchards particularly, when they were constructed, they were kind of constructed on the fly. So when we did 21st Street, we did the boring, we pulled it out. There was no real true base under that. And we've done some of the boring. It was on Brighton and 7th when we did some bores on that. Very little base, not much. I'm assuming they went out there similar to what was on top, put something of a base on it, and then put asphalt on top of it. So we're gonna continue to struggle in some of these arterials. This road could probably handle a Model T just fine, but that's not a Peterbilt or a Kenworth coming across there at 40 miles an hour. So the streets that we have that have been converted in the last 30, 40, 50 years, and the orchards in particular, that weren't necessarily constructed to handle that heavy traffic. And so Lewiston's done a pretty decent job scrapping them together, but I think they're starting, that's why you see so much rutting. 7th and Bryden was a great example of the rutting going across Bryden between the temperatures, a bad base, and maybe some not great asphalt that went down. That's where you're gonna start seeing some massive ruts on that, but that's future maintenance that we'll talk about. Here's a picture of Thane. I don't have a location or an orientation which way this is, but you can kind of see this one's a little bit later. This is probably closer to the 20s, but same concept. A lot more traffic on this road. The base, I'm not sure Thane was built to handle a true modern, a truck across it. And you're seeing, if you've ever come out of any of the restaurants or anything on Thane, you get a lot of that rutting. And so I think a lot of that is caused by basically the base that you see in this picture. Last real bit of information. This is, anytime you go talk about asphalt maintenance, asphalt preservation, you talk about it's the SAW. And so it's a chronological, so this is time, and this is basically your pavement condition index. And so you got a brand new one, you're at about 100 right here, and over time, it starts to wear, the UV, the sun beats down the asphalt, which starts getting the cracking within the oil, which then, you want to go back in. So you do a crack seal. So you get your index back up to mid 80s, mid 90s. And over time, it starts to degrade a little bit more. So you come back out and you do maybe you do a slurry seal or a more crack sealing, something like that. So it brings it up a little bit more. And eventually that asphalt it's been hammered by the light, it's been hammered by traffic. It's got a good 20 years life in typical mat of asphalt. So you do a mill and overlay, it brings you right back up to the top. So these corrections up here, these dots, are much more affordable than if you were to let that road get down into under the 40s, where once you get down in here, you've got too much damage to your base, and so you can mill and overlay it, you can do whatever you want, but those ruts are worn into the base, and so you've got to pull that out, you've got to excavate it all out and put it back in there and reconstruct it, and that's when you start talking about some significant value in the roads. And so we've always talked about, it's way cheaper to invest early on and keep those things watertight than to let them degrade and have to reconstruct them. The only thing here is just the same thing I always bring you. I recycle a lot of these slides, but generally there is no secret to where the funds come from. I mean, it's a limited pool, whether it's grants, we have user fees, which is, gas tax and things like that. Road and bridge tax, which is through the county. Property tax, I think, is the big one that, that's the one you guys control the most, because that is, you are the only agency that you set the budget. So all the other ones, you're either relying on an outside agency or requesting, the state will dole up how they do the gas tax and everything else. So franchise fees, you would play a role in that if we're currently at 1%. All franchises, Avista and the Port and Sparklight, those all pay into that. And that it's at 1% now. with voter approved, it could go up to 3%, and that would go towards transportation. So just a reminder of where those funds come from and where they would go on just managing our pavement. So I think that's really all I got, high level. As I said, I don't have all the answers right now with the draft report, but I'm open for conversation and seeing what we can come up with. So I stand for questions.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Spickmeyer?
Curious, you're talking about setting the foundation, and like in the orchards, I've been watching some of the contractors up there. They're doing some utility work and digging holes and stuff. And it doesn't look like when they're filling it back in, there's a whole lot of effort put in. It looks like they put the dirt in and then put some cold patch on it. I mean, do all those get inspected? Because they're extremely rough after they're done, and that's the first place that wears out and starts peeling out.
Yeah, yes. Right now, the batch plants are closed, so everything goes in it as is cold mix or, not in a final patch. So a lot of our agreements, there's a couple, a subcontractor of Vista doing some gas line work right now. And so they'll come back and recut those out and then put hot mix on them when the batch plants come in. So yeah, there is a lot of sloppy stuff out there, kind of just because there's no hot mix available right now. And so those will come back, and we keep a log of everything that's out there. And I will admit, there's stuff that does get missed, and we get reminded of neighbors who say this thing's been open or it's been cold mix. Now it's a puddle. It's caused a much bigger issue. But yeah, I think that's something that we've talked about, because I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole too far, but Lewiston is unique. We've got the other entities, Vista, the private utilities. Then we have water districts, and we have a water district and a sewer district. And we don't control, we control some of that, but a lot of that is just trying to have a good partnership with a lot of our agencies in there. But a lot of that stuff is kind of a give and take, because the Lewiston Orchards Irrigation District existed before they were the city of Lewiston. And so that is their domain, and our roads are on top of their water lines. So there's been a lot of conversations back and forth, and I will say I have a great relationship with their manager up there right now. But there has been times where we've had struggles of trying to communicate, they're replacing this line, or we're gonna mill and overlay this road, and so trying to coordinate, and a lot of that's just communication with those other agencies. Vista's a little bit different. They with being a franchise, they're held to a standard that they have to replace it and bring it up to our standard. And if they don't, we give them the list and they'll come out and fix it.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor?
Councilor Horstman?
I see in the 5.4 summary, the pavement analysis models conducted using the ESA program showed that the current annual budget of 1.2 for pavement management result in deterioration of pavement condition over a period of 5 years. So is the current budget we have set sufficient enough to keep up with the roads?
No.
Okay.
No. Yes, so the answer is no. And I'm glad you caught on to that segment, is that 1.2 million has been leveraged so much into local streets. And so we need to diversify. I think we're keeping up just fine. Maybe we can trim a little bit out of local, but I don't think we want to just take all of the 1.2 out of the local and then focus on the arterials, because then the opposite would happen. We would have really bad local streets and arterials would look great. So yeah, the analysis in the report, they basically extrapolate all of the data and said, here's where all your roads are deficient. Here's what you're putting into it. And yeah, if you were to continue to fund it at the current rate, you're not going to catch up. In fact, your roads are going to degrade. So, and a lot of that feeds into where we're at right now. This is just a snapshot, but the snapshot is, like as I said, your arterials are at reconstruction. And so to reconstruct 21st from the bottom all the way to the top or Main Street, those are $20, $30, $40 million projects. And so 1.2 million is not going to go very far on that. And then, I don't want to go too far down this road, but a lot of that, it's hard. A lot of these funds, like the gas tax, The intent for that is for pavement preservation. And we view that pavement preservation, cracked sealing, even chip sealing is a maintenance issue. Striping, all of that surface treatment is a maintenance issue. The pivot point there is mill and overlay. Once you get into mill and overlay, that's starting getting into capital, and that's more of a construction function. It's still fixing a broken road, but if you can keep on the front end and invest heavily into the maintenance, you don't have to go into that construction.
I'll save some of my other ones then for budgetary time, but that one's caught my eye, so thank you.
Yeah, I had that in the presentation, but it gets really deep really quick, and I think we'll have a future discussion when we get closer to budget to generally I need to look at the data and kind of demonstrate some very specific points where that 1.2 could have been maybe invested differently, or if we had a little bit more, we could have done different. But right now, I think the 1.2 is okay because we're managing the local. It's the construction that we really need to get on for these arterials that are below standard.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Speckelmeyer?
So, Director, you said kind of a follow-up. So as far as budget-wise, the transportation capital funding here coming up on the next meeting, that really won't be looking at the true funding of it? We're gonna wait till budget time?
The CIP next
Yeah.
week? No, yeah, the CIP is only looking at the large capital projects. You know, in 21st Street, again, it's kind of fallen into that in between because it is according to the feds, when you do anything mill and overlay, that is a capital project, which then triggers the ADA ramps. And so by designation, that's a construction project. So that's why it fell on the that's why it's kind of on the capital. But it's still gonna need a reconstruction, which is even deeper. And so when we get into those, now we're talking about other utilities, the full, everything there.
One more.
Councilor Speckelmeyer?
I was gonna ask about that truck when it drove around. Does it look at the whole width of the road or a section of the road?
No, what's really cool, so I used to have to do this by hand, and so you'd have the video and or you hang out the window and you count cracks, and so they come through and when they did it with the MPO, you just ordered whatever you wanted. It was like going to the buffet. So we have a sidewalk index, and I can't remember, Shannon, what all did we have with that? Was there a sign inventory? We didn't do the sign inventory, but it will do the whole, whatever you want to include it, that would be part of the street. But I do remember we have a sidewalk inventory as part of it, and a couple other issues on there. But yeah, they'll do all of that. And they've got the footage, so for whatever reason, we said, oh, yeah, we want the sign inventory. They can go back and spit that out for us, which we already have, so we didn't really need it, but.
Well, I was wondering, because that report for Burrell from like 5th down to 7th gave it a fair to good. Must have been about a foot wide that they were looking at.
Yeah, if you want to, like I said, this is a draft, so if there's a segment that you live on or know of, that you don't think that index is correct, send it, because we've found a couple ourselves that they left off a couple or so we've already found a couple that needed to be corrected, and they went back, and so, yeah, send me a couple or whatever one you want, and I'll take a look at that.
The routes that I take, you know, the ones that citizens often bring up are the ones that are not well right now, and so I'm there go, if you ever drive on it, I drive them on every day, that's my route, is all the bad roads, I pick the short straw. So I'm definitely feeling the pain.
Well, Director, I've had a couple of comments in this report that I think stood out to me, and I'll just read them to you. One of them says, in terms of pavement management efficiency, a program based on worst first that is starting at the lowest rated street and working up towards the highest does not achieve an optimal expenditure of funds. And that's interesting because we'll hear from folks, they'll talk about a street that's really bad and we go dump a bunch of money in it, but we're really not addressing the greater benefits. So we kind of have to make decisions sometimes to just let streets go to pot. I mean, it's just that simple. And then we deal with the complaints, or we might go out there and pound a little cold asphalt into or something like that, but we're not gonna do anything more with that. We just need to be honest with the people, when that happens. 'Cause
It's 100% true. Once you get below about a 40, you're in it. You're in for a whole reconstruct. And whereas if you're at a 75, keep it there. Don't let it go down below that.
Which at this point, you addressed a couple that were below that, sorry,
Yep.
Mayor.
And we're aware of them.
There's another comment here. It says the very poor streets are often deferred in favor of rehabilitating more streets at lower costs, resulting in a greater net benefit to the city. So when we talk about $1.2 million or something, we try to get as much done as we can with that money, and sometimes it leaves people out. I mean, I think that's just the hard, cold truth on that. And then also the comment about arterial roads typically provide the most cost benefit to the city, as these roads support the largest amount of traffic and have a larger impact on local business and other functional classes. So here's to see what the update is on that. And then if I could ask you, so between, you said this is a draft report, between this and the final report, other than a few data points that you might fix, what else is gonna change in this?
Not much of anything. Yeah, it'll need to be adopted by the MPO policy board, but outside, I mean, I've read it once. We've had a couple comments back to them. They've corrected them. There's really nothing that I see of significance. I mean, we may catch something here between now and then that's significant, but I think this is 99% done.
Thank you. Director, any further questions, councilors? Councilor Lickey?
No questions. Except what an asphalt conference must be like. It's super exciting.
Thank you for that moment of levity there, Councilor. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, next up we have Roman numeral 5B, Personnel Policy Review and Discussion of the City of Lewiston's Personnel Policy Action Item. We have our Human Resources Director, Nikki Province, with us here today. And then also on the phone, we have Councilor Lidkey, who has submitted some changes. I don't know if others have submitted that, but Director Province, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, Nikki Province, HR Director. You can see with the agenda, and I had emailed you guys that I made some edits in here as far as some of the things that I would like to see. But I did include some additional language or thoughts on at-will, since that was brought up. I will make one note, the language with at-will would need to be a little bit modified, because appointed positions would not be at-will. There's a whole different process by state statute, so. And I really didn't get any feedback from anyone else, so I didn't know if there was any further discussion on any sections or see changes that want to be made.
Director, you said you do have some changes in here that you'd like to make also to the.
Yeah, the main changes, there are slight, a couple words here or a sentence. The main changes are military leave. We redid military leave in conjunction with the legal department, and that was just to get in compliance with USERRA, federal act. There's some changes to the harassment, discrimination, retaliation section. And I did redline this so you guys can see the modifications that I've made.
So would it be okay if we just start on page 5 and just rifle through this? I don't think it'll take long.
Okay.
For the changes, and then Kayla, if we're gonna adopt these changes, should we just do them one at a time? Somebody make a motion to change or not change? What would be the best way to do this?
Typically, Kayla Herman, City Attorney, typically we would just ask council direction so that Nikki could then go through and finalize the red line, and then we would bring back a resolution for council to vote on. So there wouldn't need to be any official changes made tonight, but council could certainly provide direction for the final version, which we would then bring back via resolution.
So what if we have differences of opinion on parts of these changes? How do we resolve that?
Well, council could, if you want, make a motion if there's differences in opinion for a certain change. So someone could make a motion to direct staff to alter the personnel policy to include this change or not include this change. So you could take various votes on that if you'd like, or if there's general consensus, that would work as well. I think as long as staff is clear on the general consensus of what council would like to see to vote on, then we can make those changes and bring them back.
Thank you, Kayla. Well, council, with that, I think we'll just start on page 5, if you've got your copies with you, and we'll just ask Director Province to highlight a change and then see if there are any questions or concerns, and then we'll move to the next page.
Yeah, so on page 5, I put suggested language if you guys determine that you want to go forward with at-will change. Right now, we're for cause, and that's what that section on page 5 describes in that paragraph. So if you wanted to change for at-will, then we would need to modify that language, as well as the introductory probation period section. And there may be a few others that we would want to go through to make sure if we make that change, that we're modifying other sections of the policy to be in compliance with it.
Okay, councilors, page 5. Questions, comments?
Mayor?
Councilor Forsman?
I'm trying to really kind of understand, I guess, the pros and cons of like the at will versus for cause. Because I know obviously for cause, you know, you have to have it written down in some kind of paper trail. But you kind of do anyway for a will as well, because you want to make sure you're covering your bases and you don't have any reason for someone to come back and, you know, say we fired them unjustly or whatever. So is that, can you kind of maybe go a little bit into detail on that?
Yeah, I mean, right now for cause, you need to document the reasoning, right? You need to have, and that could be that you've followed somebody through progressive discipline, or they've done something so egregious that it moves forward to termination. You know, if they've lost certifications or something like that and are unable to do their job, then we can move to termination. At will is going to be just that there's no, not a whole lot of protection, I guess, in that you don't have to have a reason. But you would obviously still want to avoid making action for discriminatory reasons or.
Thank you. Disconnected.
You've been dropped from Zoom, she says. Who's hers? Karen, can you hear us? Councilor Licky just sent me a text and says she got dropped.
Zoom meeting's still active, so just have her try to join back in. It's still active, so
Rejoin,
she just might need to
Zoom's
reconnect.
still live.
I always feel like he's like the curtain in Wizard of Oz. It's like, where'd you come from? Behind there.
He's the wizard.
Yeah, he's the wizard back there. It's just like, oh, where'd you come from?
Wait, but to answer your question, Cassie, if you read that paragraph, employees should not.
Hold on, we need to wait for Councilor Licky.
Nope. Nope. Yeah.
Tempting, she says.
No, so she's up there.
I see her up there. Can she hear?
We
We hear you.
Can you hear us, Councilor?
Sorry. Coeur d'Alene is in a bit of a snowstorm and we're getting great reception. This on at will, it's okay if I can speak now, or am I interrupting?
No, you have the floor, Councilor.
I believe that moving to an at will just really gets other schools that are doing the same thing with the strong manner. It does not necessarily not protect the employee. I do feel like the language that's presented is a little harsh. I reviewed several of the area cities language as well as some area businesses where they're at will. And a lot of them tend to use the same language as STERM, which is the nationally recognized recycling.
Counselor, you're a
And I
little
think
bit
that
garbled.
gives- I'm gonna try to move.
Only getting itsy bitsy pieces.
Go ahead.
Oh, we lost it.
Is off.
All right, I'm trying to use Kootenai Hospital's Wi-Fi and it's not really working. Can you hear me better now?
Better, yes.
Sorry, I'm outside, so if I start to get garbled now, it's because my teeth are chattering. Just to speak to the at-will, I do believe that it is the right move to move towards that when that is really the norm across the state. And as I sent out previous that 8 of the 9 other cities in our district are at will, and comparable to the city of Moscow with a strong mayor and all the other cities having a strong mayor as well, just allows, especially where we're transitioning, and I understand the prior council's reasons to put in place for cause as, out of apprehension and maybe a little even fear of what the future was going to hold for the employees of the city of Lewiston. However, I really think that language and the presented language in the red line seems a little harsh. I don't think it's as two-way as it could be. Most policy manuals I reviewed from surrounding cities and then just local businesses used language modified from SHRM, which is a nationally accredited HR body that many people use. In fact, I think the city of Lewiston on a subscription to that. I'm not sure, I may be speaking on the chain there, but really it is a two-way relationship, meaning we can't hold an employee to stay either, but it is just a non-binding relationship based on amicable relationship between the employer and the employee. And moving in that direction does not take anything away. It does not make it so that supervisors can walk into the library or to the senior lunch program and say, you're gone with no cause. That is not a practice that I would ever recommend. It is, however, gives a clear line of communication to staff, both current and new, that this is not a guaranteed job, that management will respect the process of ensuring that you're well communicated with on the value you bring to the job and your performance on a regular schedule. It truly does line up so that leadership is expected to lead instead of having staffing issues that can snowball into issues that none of us want to see. So I highly recommend that we go towards that language, and I don't believe that it harms any employee, current or future.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Forsman,
I'm not sure what,
you're gonna have to speak up, or I don't know if she'll hear you, Counselor.
I'm not sure what area of red lining she's referring to.
Yeah, the language that I have listed here, we had presented at will to a previous council, and working with an outside attorney in our legal office, this was the language that was presented, but it doesn't have to be this language. I mean, if you feel like it's too harsh, it's basically just suggesting that there's no guarantee of continued employment when you're at will. So you can be let go.
So she's probably, Counselor Licky, are you talking about in the blue box on the side?
I mean, if she would prefer to use language from SHRM, we can, it's a global HR organization. But and I thought I heard her say that, and I didn't really catch everything, but.
Counselor Schroeder?
Yes, we did make the change for cause. I'd like to hear again your reasoning why we did that. I mean, do you support one over the other?
Oh my gosh, that's a pointed question. I will support whatever council wants to do.
I understand
I
that.
think that people, I can't speak for employees, but if I had to guess, I would say that those bargaining agreements have protection. They're for cause, and I will use that word because you have to have reason, sufficient reason to terminate that person. If you're at will, there's that fear and concern that maybe it won't be used appropriate, or that you will just be let go, or a new mayor or council will decide someone, they don't like their ideas or opinions or direction. So it's not new. Like Hannah said, there are agencies are at will. So it's nothing introducing anything new. In one hand, maybe an employee who is not performing, well, could be let go instead of going through a progressive disciplinary, which can take time. But it's also really giving that employee time to get your expectations and time to improve. If they don't, then they don't. But you're providing them time and information to improve and get better. That's the hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just two ways, I think, of looking at it. But you have 3 other contracts that are for cause, and they want it that way for a reason.
For a reason.
Mhm.
And may I?
Counselor?
Thank you. Now that I forgot it, but no. The actual employees would have more of a sense of a city commitment to them for cause, correct? Doesn't that kind of emotionally give them a little more security?
I think that would be fair to say, because you couldn't just be fired one day. Rather, you'd be going through a progressive type of discipline, giving yourself a chance to improve. It wouldn't be, you lost your job and you're done. You'd have some sort of awareness of an ability to improve upon yourself.
Mayor?
Mr. Mayor?
And it's not that you couldn't do that with at will. I mean, we've left the discipline portions in there.
Counselor Lidkey?
Yeah, I would just reiterate that that doesn't take away progressives and it doesn't take away coaching. What it actually does in my organization and others is that it does give a sense of this is a job, you're expected to do the work. And especially when a transitionary period, maybe you have a new director and the director comes in and finds out that there has been a history of an issue with an employee. Now, I'm speaking in generalities, I'm not speaking about the city of Lewiston. What that does by having it at will says that when a change needs to occur, a manager can come in and find out that there was either nepotism or just plain negligence by a manager to not do the steps of discipline and coaching. And you have a toxic employee that needs to be removed. Now, I'm not saying a manager doesn't sit down and try to coach, but when you have a problem that needs to be removed so that you can be successful, at will allows for that to happen in a transition. And more often than not, we do find that for cause is great, but it's not protection. It means that there has to be documentation, but the severity of an infraction still allows discretion for a manager, supervisor, and the mayor to let somebody go depending on the severity. But in this day and age where you're trying to create a culture where the job is valued, but also that we are competitive, we offer a very generous benefits package and wage that we are trying to stay up on. At will says, we need you to show up and do your job. It's not a threat, but it is something that says, look, we take being an employer just as serious as you take being an employee. I still feel it does no harm, and many very successful businesses and municipalities throughout the state of Idaho use it and do not abuse it.
Thank you, Counselor. So, Counselor, I want to read here, and Director Province, please help me with this. Under Chapter 10, Disciplinary Action, it says, progressive steps may be implemented in order to encourage improved performance or attitude, but are not required. So is that the same as at will, or is that different?
No, it's different. It just gives the supervisor, the city, the mayor, that it could be that something has been done that's so egregious that you haven't moved through so for example, if you were required to have a CDL as a component of your job and you lose your CDL due to whatever reason, then you can no longer perform your job. So it wouldn't make sense to go through progressive discipline. It would make sense that you've lost your CDL and can no longer perform your job, maybe you move on. So you don't pinhole somebody because every case is different.
Mr. Schroeder?
To that, the question then, does that, if that person lost their CDL, how would that be different between for cause or at will? How would
Have a similar outcome?
it's similar outcome? And I know that when we were talking about for cause, that the directors and the people that line up under that need to do their jobs. And not always are they doing that to review employees as untimely or catch any mistakes or supervise them to the correct degree. Wasn't there some issues there?
Well, yeah, I mean, a supervisor needs to take the actions to document it, to counsel, whether at will or for cause. I mean, Hannah's right, that's the goal, right? Even if you're at will, you're counseling, you're meeting with that employee, you're setting expectations, maybe a performance improvement plan, you're being proactive. Turnover is very expensive for the city. We don't want to necessarily go that direction, right? But I think that's if you were using it in the right way.
And that's true then with both for cause or at will. And does it really make a really big difference whether there's a majority of other people that use for cause instead of, at will?
Just be looking at it two different ways.
I don't see the reason to change this, but I'm only one person.
Counselor Klein?
I feel like it would be in our best interest to align with the state policies of at-will. It's something that people already know that Idaho is an at-will state, so it seems to me like our local government should be following that same policy.
Counselor Forsman?
When I'm reading this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if there is scenarios where someone has done something that is really egregious, as they say, I think in the language here, you do not have to follow that long drawn out process, correct? There are certain scenarios where you can let them go.
Yeah, I mean, if you read it, this gives a framework, provides discipline options that you may be taken when an employee violates employment policies or fails to adequately perform his or her duties. So, if somebody's been late 3 or 4 times and you've talked to them, but they continue to do it, maybe you have a written record of discussion. You're starting that process. But it could be that their performance, they've done something egregious and you move to suspension, It kind of gives you that option to do that. Generally, you would counsel with that employee and you would go through the progression. But there are things that happen where maybe you go straight to a record of discussion.
I wanna keep walking through it, and then maybe people have more questions.
But it would be good for my sense to have some sort of direction so that we can make sure we're moving the personnel policy how you guys would want it to be.
Counselor Lidke, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay, what would be your preference to take action on this now or walk through the whole policy and some of the other changes that I think you've submitted and then take them up at that time?
You can certainly put that. I do, if you are gonna stay for pause, then, and again, I think my real issue with the personnel manual is being very vague. If I were to come in as a frontline staff and read through your personnel manual, I would feel like it was very much geared towards myself, but not really the expectations of my management and directors. When you have permissive language like they may use suggestive, and I understand that is maybe to jump steps. What that says to me though is it gives an out to my supervisor to not speak every discrimination routine.
No, it's really hard to understand. Counselor, it's really hard to understand what you're saying.
Give me 1 second. They keep telling me the Wi-Fi will get better, but still, apparently I need to be out in the storm to get service. So hopefully you can hear me better now.
Go ahead.
Just to that, we can certainly go through the rest of the changes. It's really that permissive language that for me, as somebody reading that as an outside person, I tried to read it as if I were going to be hired as a frontline staff. And when I read through that, there's really not a lot of language or sections that address what's expected of a manager or supervisor, somebody in authority, as far as what I can expect from my boss. Even to the point of when I can find them available. There's not a lot of language to their expectation of exempt staff. And there's a lot of permissive language that as an employee, I would feel actually very uncertain about how I would be treated if I were to do something that was frowned upon by my supervisor. The language may use progressive discipline, tells me that may or may not. So am I going to be treated fairly amongst my teams? Things of that nature. For cause and at will is the basis of that, and then I believe you build on that. So I would really like to see the rest of the manual and we can walk through it. I'm gonna tell you right now, I can hear everybody, but I'm not gonna be able to interject, so I'm gonna do my best to step out, but it is freezing and there's been 3 inches of snow laid down since I've stood here and talked, so, and I'm supposed to try to return home safely today.
Okay, Counselor, I think that's what we'll do then. We'll just march through the personnel policy manual. When we get to the end, we'll see if there's any action at that time.
Go ahead.
Nikki?
Do you have a comment or?
Oh, Counselor.
Thank you. So some of the things that Hannah was talking about to make things more clear to a possible new hire, is that any different than what should be in there for cause? I mean,
I don't know.
is it tied, is that language kind of tied to at will?
No, if I understood correctly, I think there's a couple of things there that she was talking about. I'm not sure what language is permissive exactly. I mean, it'd be helpful to know exactly what
Yeah.
language.
I understand.
But she mentioned exempt staff too, and I think she's talking about holding exempt staff to the policy and to be treating people the same versus not knowing what discipline to give out.
And exempt staff is contract, right?
Exempt staff would be like your directors, your managers.
Oh, okay, yes, right. Mayor?
Counselor Forsman?
You know, I read a couple employee handbooks, obviously, at different jobs and stuff, and I've seen maybe terms of like, if your manager doesn't act on an employee misbehaving or going against the rules of the policy, that they could also be held responsible, like they can be let go from, so I've seen that kind of wording as far as, you know, even the managers have to hold their employees liable for how they behave. But as far as like, I don't know, I haven't seen it so detailed in a handbook where, oh, if your manager, they're gonna do this and this and this. Typically, that's laid out when
I
you
haven't
get
really
the
seen
job, I
that
think, or
either.
individual departments, but I don't know, that's kinda how I've seen it in the past, so I'm not really grasping, I guess I'm not grasping that language.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Managers and leadership are still tied to the same personnel policy. If they're not doing their job, they too can be disciplined. A director or mayor, so.
I think Hannah, it was a comment from Hannah regarding the language on may versus shall, so maybe that's.
Any specific section or just, is that section?
Kayla?
And if I could just clarify too, Kayla Herman, city attorney, we need to have the communications spoken, chat won't work for the communications under the open meetings law.
Thank you.
Can you hear that, Counselor Lidkey?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor? Question on, your suggestion that we should follow state, and they are not for cause, they are at will. Is there a reason that we should follow state versus, our own? You know? Whether it should be followed? I mean, there's a lot of times we talk and we have things that we do at the state level, but that's a baseline, we can be more extreme than that. So,
Well, and I think every city is a little bit unique. Like Hannah had mentioned Moscow, they don't have any collective bargaining agreements. Their employees are all fall under one. And in this case, we have 3 other bargaining agreements that have all been bargained for cause. We weren't aware that at-will was something council wanted, right? So that wasn't ever brought up. But, so I would say, you know, it's really whatever you guys want to do. If you want to follow at-will, then we can modify the language. Doesn't mean that we can't hold supervisors accountable to do some sort of progressive discipline. And, I don't know, maybe identify some language that's how it will be proceeded. And only, you know, in times of serious performance or issues, the person will be terminated without notice or something like that. I don't know if you want to try to input some information in there that gives it a little bit more guidance for supervisors, that you can't just terminate someone, that the idea is that you will go through progressive discipline.
something to that effect, I think makes a lot of sense in the fact that we have 3 groups of people that are this way. I just think it's like everything else, you want to keep every employee kind of to as much of the same degree as possible. I mean.
And I'm gonna assume that's why we've had for cause.
Exactly, and that,
Treat the employees
it kind of made,
similarly.
yeah, it made sense when we changed it to this, although we started out for at will, and you made sense to us, so, I'm tightening up the standards from the top down, I think it's maybe okay to do that. just making them aware again that they have a responsibility to carry forward that discipline or that reviews. But no, I feel that cause is the way it should be.
Counselor Spickelmeyer?
Would it be possible to hear input from the directors, if they had any input on the discussion?
I don't know that they're prepared to do that today, and we also do not have all the directors here to do that. I think they would need advance notice of that. No, that would be my 2 cents. I mean, you're certainly free to call someone up if you'd like, but they don't have to, they choose not to do that. So, Counselor, I'd give you that opportunity, but
Kayla's got some.
Kayla?
Kayla Herman, City Attorney. I have more of a legal consideration for council to consider. And this is something that Nikki and I have spoken about previously. And if council does desire to change in this direction, we will need to thoroughly review the personnel policy. Because one thing that will be important is it needs to clearly be defined. There really shouldn't be a blend. It should either be for cause or at will, and those need to be separate and clear from a legal standpoint. So if we start getting closer to the middle and trying to blend those, that's where we could run into potential issues down the road. So I just had that comment for council as well to consider.
Can I have a question from that then?
Counselor Ford?
So with that language, with that may versus shall, is that tie into that? Like, what kind of language puts us into for cause versus like at will? Like, what kinds of things?
Well, I think like Director Province mentioned earlier, having the progressive discipline steps and using the may language in there is my understanding to provide that flexibility based on the situation, because there could be situations that are very egregious where you need to jump a few steps to take action, or there may be some where the decision is made that you don't need to. But with at will, you, like Director Province mentioned, should have documentation to show that there is no discriminatory issue at play or something like that, but there's not necessarily a requirement that you go through these steps because you are at will, basically at the pleasure of your employer. So I think we would need to look at other places to see how it's used, but also, generally speaking, some of the procedures for pre-discharge hearing requirements, things like that would go away if you would move to at will. So those are all various components that come into play that would need to be reviewed carefully if that's the direction council wants to go.
Counselor Schroeder?
The direction that I would like to go is just to stay with for cause. Yes, that is my preference.
Fair.
Counselor Forsman?
I think the biggest thing I'm not understanding, for one, if with bringing this to light, is like, my question is there issues with it as it stands? Like, what, have we not been able to effectively discipline or effectively hold people accountable with the policy that we have? And I'm not obviously seeing that. I haven't heard that being an issue. So I'm not understanding the really reason for change, as well as I don't honestly find it fair to have a different type of standard for non-representative employees. If we're gonna have one, then we need to be transparent on all contracts as best as possible. And I have seen companies use for at will inappropriately and get rid of people when they shouldn't have. And that person, unless they're willing to spend money and get a lawyer, they are unrepresented. So I don't know. Unless I can see a reason that we're not able to perform our city jobs or hold our personnel responsible, I don't understand the reason for the change. I'm not seeing it.
I would say that the only time that we have an issue for cause is when a supervisor has not properly documented, counseled, or gone through progressive discipline with an employee, and they've allowed their performance to continue. And you might have a changeover of supervisor, or people are aware that that person, whatever. But otherwise, I would say that's really the issue with it.
Is that the only way we can mitigate that issue?
No, I mean, if a supervisor follows, counseling with an employee, even sitting down and documenting discussions and going maybe to an official reprimand, you're working through and providing that employee time to improve and meet up to your expectations, But if a supervisor's not doing that, they're not holding people accountable to those expectations, and they're not documenting, and they're not having counseling or building that story of poor performance, then it's really difficult to then terminate that person when you have good evaluations, you have no documentation, but yet you have a poor performing employee that's not good for the city. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but then I think that reflects badly on their supervisor. If their
It does, yeah.
supervisor isn't doing their job to hold their employees accountable, then that they need to be looked at more than the person that's not doing their job. So that shows leadership and that they need to be held accountable as a leader. So I'm not for it at this moment. I'm fine staying the way with the language as is.
Counselor Ledke, last comments?
I would just say that, leadership goes clear to the top, including directors and the mayor. And so when transitions occur or when a supervisor or director is not doing their job and no progressive discipline has been done in the past, but there's a history of an issue, how are we going to ensure that the mayor and directors can do their job by removing employees that are an issue? And again, this is just, I'm in these conversations regularly, and the current workforce right now, there needs to be a return to accountability, and it starts with leadership. So I'm more than willing to see some language that, and as Kayla said, we can show it, but businesses that misuse it usually get in trouble on down the line. Documentation can happen on both sides. An employee can document as much as a supervisor. And if we have a strong grievance policy and even implementing a code of ethics, probably would make employees who work very hard for the city of Lewiston feel like they had something to lean on. So I think there's some area for improvement. We went through a massive change in how the workforce acts and responds to things. And people need to get back to work and understand the expectations of them. And so a lot of people are getting back into the manuals and ensuring that they're clear and concise. And that's all I'm really driving towards.
Well, Counselor, I think we're gonna move on to the next page or any other changes we have in here. But I'm gonna put a card on the table. I will say publicly that I would prefer that it says at will. I don't think it's going to change how I would administer this policy. The policy belongs to the council, and you write it, and you adopt it. I don't, unless it's a 3-3 tie. But I think the notion of progressive discipline sometimes can give a false sense of security, because if we go back and look at some of the things that have been done in the past, honestly, about the city, I think maybe sometimes we did a lot of progressive discipline. In other words, second and third and fourth chances, and there was no accountability. And so, maybe an at-will policy at least wakes people up to the fact that you may not get another chance. And so even with a for cause, progressive discipline is not required. You don't have to wait for somebody to do 2 or 3 actions before you take action. And so that takes strong leadership. And you have to do that. So you either have good people in place, good leaders, good directors that are doing that and holding their people accountable, and it goes right on down the line, or you don't. But I think it's a good discussion, and I think it's one that we need to be aware of, just to make sure that we're being as, just being as good as we can be in our positions and serving the citizens that we serve. So I appreciate the discussion, but I don't want to just hide over here. I want to tell you how I look at this and how I interpret the policy whenever I have to make a decision, so. Go on, next page.
Yeah, do you wanna go page by page or just the suggested changes I made?
Wherever the changes are.
Okay,
13, is that the next one?
page 8, if we did add
Oh, I see.
some at-will language, we would need to include a section in there.
We're not gonna deal with that today.
Yep. So, section 203 on page 12 and 13. Cleaned up a little bit of harassment, and the definition of. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comment on that.
The only part you changed was in blue, correct?
For you, it might show blue, red,
Oh, okay.
a color of some sort.
Yeah, ours is all blue.
Is it blue? Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
then blue. And then it doesn't sound like there's any
I'm gonna
questions.
ask a question on page 13. It says genetic information. I don't know if I've ever seen that written this way.
Where at?
It's under harassment defined. Equal Employment Commission, Opportunity Commission.
They do have it's called GINA, it's a Genetic Information Act. And so, this language was taken from the Equal Opportunity Commission, so they're probably including genetic information as something that is protected under that GINA Act. Any other questions before we can move on?
Mayor,
Counselor Forsman?
is there some, and I did read through this, but there was a lot, so I could have forgotten if I missed it. Is there something in here that, says if a leadership role did not document, and we found that to be an issue, that's grounds for termination, or something around those lines?
I don't think it specifically says that, but you're a supervisor, so if you're not supervising, which is also coaching and counseling,
Right.
discipline, then you're probably not performing your job well.
Correct. Yeah, I was just curious if that was something that might help the concerns, but.
Which I think Hannah was trying to get to with the shall instead of may. Like, you will do it.
Yeah.
This is your policy, counselors, as we go through it. So if you have any questions, concerns, now is the time. Or if you're not gonna take action today, then we can come back and revisit this later. But just be aware that it's your policy.
Mayor,
Counselor Forsman?
could we change that verbiage to, I guess I don't see a specific, well, here is employees shall immediately instead of will or may, so.
Where are you at, counselor?
Sorry, 13 still, reporting and investigating harassing, discriminating, and relatory conduct. Can we just, would it make sense to change anything that says may to shall?
Well, under reporting and investigating, it does say employees shall immediately notify their supervisor, HR. And so you're just wanting to make sure that they're investigated? Is that what you're trying to?
I was just saying, back to those terms of like how you said Hannah was kind of getting to that shall or may, so that people realize they have to do this.
Yeah, I think she was talking about like in the disciplinary section,
Okay, we can move on then. If that's,
if I understood her correctly. So let me see here. page 46, section,
I didn't, sorry, I said 46, I repeated.
46, section 307, telecommuting. I did just add a sentence in there about ongoing or not in short nature to have a draft telecommuting agreement. Hannah did have the question about equipment during telecommuting, but there is a whole equipment section, so I didn't really address that since it was already in here. Any questions, or can we move on? All right, page 53, under background checks, criminal history. We talked about modifying it so that people who may have had felonies are not completely dismissed from employment with the city. I looked at a couple other cities' policies on criminal history, and it looked very similar to this, where it's really not excluding flat out, but saying it's under the discretion based on these qualifying concerns. So, I mean, I hope I was getting at Hannah's point.
So, to me, reading that one, it leaves it very vague. And it doesn't state in there that it leaves it up to the director to discretion.
Yeah, it says human resources in conjunction with the applicable department director will consider the following factors in determining whether to disqualify the individual.
So you could have the possibility of many different rules throughout the city. One director could go one direction, another director could go the other.
Well, I mean, they'd be in conjunction with HR, which we wouldn't want them to do that.
You could.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it says human resources in conjunction with the department director.
It could be different policies for departments. They could hire, one department could hire somebody under a circumstance where another one wouldn't do it.
I mean, that has the potential, but also maybe based on the job. Like if they were working with children versus not working with children. I don't
It
know.
looks to me like it's leniency.
Okay. How would you prefer that it's, huh?
I would leave it.
Oh, you want to leave it like it is?
I would.
We'll get rid of the blue, or bring
Leave.
back the blue?
Leave the, don't change it.
You mean this part would stay the same, the strikeout?
I just think it leaves it to, you wouldn't have a true city policy, it could be different.
I appreciate that. My only concern would be that sometimes we have, it's so specific that we'll have people who apply that maybe we're only doing a background check for 7 years, but 15, 20 years ago they had a felony, may not apply anymore, but because they've had a felony, we can't hire them.
Well, I would rather see it if you kept the wording in it, but maybe had a part in there that the director could ask for consideration.
Okay. An exception with the mayor? That, how you guys would like to
Exception
proceed?
with the mayor.
So leave it, but then have the ability for the department director to ask for an exception of the mayor.
I'm fine with that.
I made a minor edit on page 54, just to strike a sentence. Page 55, I did make an edit to introductory probation period. In the event we go to at-will, we're not gonna need that section. And page 59, advancement within salary. I did add language in regards to individuals who are in an acting capacity. This is, how I've outlined it here is really the process that payroll and HR have been doing, but it wasn't written. And so this just clarifies it for employees that when you're in an acting position, this is how we will take into consideration your previous position's step increases. I'll just move on if there's no other. On page 65, vacation leave, I modified extended to medical leave of absences greater than 12 weeks, since there are other extended leaves like military leave. So we wanted to address that specifically to medical. Page 67, family medical leave. I modified the language to say has included in this policy, since because it's in our policy, we are not required to give each new employee a notice of FMLA. And then, let's see here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Mayor, sorry,
Counselor?
thank you. Religious holidays,
Mhm.
is that something that I don't see anything that says like we're like federally or anything held to that. So is that more just of a kind benefit of the city that we try to accommodate it, but sometimes it won't be accommodated? How does that work? I've not seen that
Well, you
before,
can't be
so-
discriminatory to a person's religion.
Right, no, I
So
understand that.
if they
but-
have holidays within their religion, we don't want to, basically you're allowing them the time off. You're not paying them as a holiday, you're paying them through their accrued leave.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But what if the event that you're you don't have too many people out and you can't have another person out, because then the staffing would be too short? Are you guys legally able to say no to that?
I don't know that we are. I'd have to research that, but I don't think that we are.
I've not seen that at any company I've worked in, but I don't know whether that's whether that's different between municipal to private organizations. I know there can be differences there, so.
Off the top of my head, I'm thinking it's, not be discriminatory, but I could find the law that would show you that.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I had not seen that ever, so that'd be good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Page 84, section 610, military leave of absence. Legal assisted me in redoing this policy. We found out our policy was not really, some parts were in compliance, but others not. So this is in true compliance with USERA, so. And then, if there's no questions about that.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Lidkey?
if I could ask, Director Provin, could you go through with the council, and I'm trying to get out of Snowmageddon, so I don't have it in front of me, I had to close my computer. But could you go through what the process is like when, an employee has a grievance, say against their supervisor? Can you go through if we have a no retaliatory and what that looks like for employees that are having issues with supervisors?
Yeah, I mean, on page 96, there is, chapter 9 grievance procedure.
What was the page number? I'm sorry.
96. So it provides you a process, examples of matters that are appropriate to grieve. So for example, like an evaluation, you can grieve an evaluation, but you could provide a rebuttal. But there are examples here listed. And then the steps. So you would promptly bring the grievance to the attention of the immediate supervisor. If the grievance involves the supervisor, then it is permissible to proceed directly to step 2. You appeal the supervisor's decision to the department director, so you're kind of working your way up. Appeal the department director's decision to the mayor. If dissatisfied with the department and the department director's decision, the mayor will review and investigate the grievance and issue as written, final and binding, which is his thing. Okay, do you feel like there needs to be more to that section?
Counselor Lidkey?
Yeah, I would just, a lot of times, staff are unsure and afraid to come forward because of retaliatory behavior from their supervisor. And so I wasn't remembering a very strong statement that would protect staff. And in a for cause, situation, usually you see a grievance procedure that is very strong, so that there's documentation either from an outside source or a compliance officer or a neutral third party. And so that description often, is usually the HR office is supposed to be the neutral, unbiased
position, and so I was just trying to wrap my head around, is that a policy that employees use, take advantage of? Do we ever have issues in-house of feeling that, that fear of bringing an issue to the table? And so that would just be my, do we feel like the staff feels like that's strong enough for them in any situation to be able to defend themselves or approach a work environment that isn't healthy?
This does say employees are not to be penalized for proper use of the grievance procedure. So I haven't heard anything different from employees, but if that's something you guys wanna, if you wanna add a sentence that says they will not be retaliated against in any way. It does say if you use the grievance procedure improperly, you can be, or in bad faith or solely for the purpose of delay or harassment, then that's a problem. But I feel like it's.
Which I would agree. I would agree with that language. I just know that if what I'm hearing from other council members is there's a sense to protect the staff. And I often wonder if we could use stronger language so that internal issues could be brought forward more openly and issues defined and rectified in any employment, place of employment. But reading through, I did feel like it seemed, again, a little one-sided of be careful to not use this improperly, you will be reprimanded, when there's not really, you're protected. What does that mean? And what are you protected from? So I would really like to see some language that shows what those protections are for staff that may or may not have concerns.
Okay.
Mayor?
Counselor Spickelmeyer.
So I guess, Counselor Lickey, would it be like a whistleblower policy,
Which we do have.
which is in there?
Counselor
Isn't
Forsman.
this kind of what she's referring to? This is kind of if they felt that their supervisor like maybe wasn't doing their job right or answering questions or maybe treating them unfairly, they could come to you and then that supervisor is not allowed to retaliate of any kind of, or show any differences to that employee after
Right.
they've expressed their concerns.
And that's what we would
Yeah.
advise of them, is to not retaliate against.
Yeah, I would just say that a whistleblower to me is if a process within the city was like improper or illegal. That's where I go with whistleblower. Non-retaliatory behavior from your supervisor is more on that work relationship, and where I feel like if we're really trying to protect the frontline staff that aren't under a bargaining agreement, then we should really look at beefing up that language so they feel like they have a voice.
My best to come back with something. Okay, chapter 10, page 97, disciplinary action. Really what I did in this section is I removed the performance improvement plan out of probation, disciplinary probation, and really put itself on its own, because it can be used in other progressive. So for example, you could use it as part of an official reprimand, or you could use it as a disciplinary probation or suspension. It can be used in any section, not just probation. Any questions on that? Okay. And then on page 100, section 1105, demotion and termination. We don't need to talk about that, but if we did go to at-will, that would need to be modified. We would no longer have a pre-discharge hearing with the mayor. That might be the end of my edits. Let me see. That's all I have for you.
Counselors, questions?
Mayor.
Counselor Forsman?
I will say I have seen, I think what kind of Counselor Licky was saying in a way where it is at will, but then in there it says that this isn't, you know, that we follow the state policy, the state guidelines, but we go still with like the three, you know, having three, what do you call it, three write-ups kind of thing first, written you know, like we don't follow the for at will policy, but we abide by it kind of term, like language. I've seen some similar to that where you still have it strictly laid out, but you're still under the at will. Which is, I guess, still you still have some of that assurance that your company's gonna try to follow that written, like to make sure that they're writing everything down and documenting involving HR and helping give you that extra chance. But then they're also still have to lead and see if something really does need to happen and they needed to need to let go of someone, they could do it, I guess, without as much concern, but.
I can work with legal to see maybe two types of language. One at will that we can see whether we can clearly define it and maybe still follow some progressive discipline and. Other questions or comments or anything, sections you want to talk about?
Director, doesn't sound like they're gonna take action on it today, so why don't I just follow up with you based on our comments we received today, and then I can work on that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, always tough to talk about. Well, I guess we go to the next thing here. Roman numeral 6, unfinished business and new business. A, city councilor comments. Comments shall not be related to an item currently before the council or an item that may come before the council in the foreseeable future and shall be limited to comments, not discussion. Councilors, any quick comments? Okay. Jump to item B, boards and commission updates. We can save that until next Monday if we'd like.
I don't have any. I wasn't prepared till.
What's that?
I said I wasn't prepared for that today,
Yeah.
sorry.
I know, I thought about that. Mayor comments, I don't have anything to offer today, other than just congratulations again to Captain Reese. That's very excited, and Chief Cusack to you also for the great job you're doing leading that department. I know I hear a lot of positive things about the department, so thank you for your leadership on that. Agenda topics, item D, councilors. Anything pressing today, or we pick it up Monday, okay? Adjournment, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Moved by Councilor Forsman, second by Councilor Clayburgh. To adjourn, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Councilor Licky, we are adjourned.